Hello, everybody, and welcome to the last WeAreOne session of this first edition. My name is Neva Josevic, and I am a senior certified executive coach at Nev Coaching Consulting, and always really happy to be here with you with these weekly calls. A little sad that these are ending, but we've got so much more coming your way, so stay tuned. So the question for us was, how do we close this beautiful initiative? And you know, how do we send you all off, all of our dear people who have accompanied us? And so we started thinking, what's actually going on for us these days? Well, some of the quarantine conditions are letting up, which is encouraging, at times confusing. You know, on the other hand, there's a lot of uncertainty and other challenges continue to evolve. So we said, really, what would be helpful for people right now? So the thought that came to mind was that, you know, we'd like to encourage you, we'd like to invite you to make a, beautiful future with us together. And I mean together, and I mean beautiful, because I think there's a lot of reason for us to be hopeful going forward as well. So the other questions though, and one thing, major one that is hitting a lot of us is, will humans evolve for the better as a result of all this pain, all this challenge? Are we going to actually learn from this? Are we going to become more responsible, more conscientious and respectful? Or are we just going to go back, I mean, human race as a whole, to being at times destructive, at times selfish and short-sighted, right? And so as a result, a lot of folks are asking themselves in particular, right? So how do I prepare for a future where so much is still uncertain? How do I position myself for this new world and new reality? Again, still not certain how that's going to affect me going forward or everybody else. And also, are we going to go back to the way it always was, or really are we preparing for a more positive evolution? And if that's the case, how can I contribute to the greater good? And so these are the three main topics we wanted to leave you with on this last session of the first edition of the WeAreOne sessions, which is first, how to power up hope and courage for continued positivity and motivation. Two, how to strengthen our perseverance and determination for creating a meaningful future together and for ourselves. And also how to nurture a sense of community, of connection and collaboration to contribute to the greater good together, right? So let's start with the first. How do we power up hope and courage for this continued positivity and motivation we'd all love to have, right? So we start with our definitions as usual. Let's start with defining hope, right? This is the desire and trust for a positive outcome. Trust is key here, if you remember back to one of our first sessions where we touched on this, because the importance is to actually feel the possibility and the optimism that good things can happen. And the second, how do we define courage, is, it's facing pain and grief. It's the ability to do something, even if it's scary. And as Brene Brown, renowned specialist in a lot of topics relating to vulnerability, to courage itself, she says courage is about having heart, right? Because it comes from the word core, which is heart. So courage in this respect is not about not having fear. It's about having it and moving forward anyway, because really, who out there is fearless? And as much as that might sound attractive, no one usually can really sustain, nor is it healthy, right? A continuous state of having no fear at all. One of the things that we'd like to do, and as a result then, is move forward by keeping that heart, by nurturing hope and working towards what we keep calling this new bliss, our new vision, whatever makes sense for us. This doesn't mean not allowing for difficult emotions. Things like sadness, anger, frustration, apathy at times, helplessness, hopelessness. These are, again, all normal aspects of the human condition. But again, it's about acknowledging those moments, letting them be and letting them pass, and then working towards something positive. Dr. Wayne Dwyer, you know him very well, I'm sure, says when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so this is critical here, right? What kind of a perspective are we going to be nurturing going forward? Understanding that when we start to influence that perspective for ourselves, hopefully for the best, we actually see and are better able to accomplish all sorts of other possibilities. The question then becomes, what inspires hope and strengthens your courage in this time and going forward, right? And we keep saying for now and for the future, because what's important to understand here is that if you're just looking to the future, but you're not taking care of yourself right now, then you're not really strengthening all the abilities, all the value that you have around you that can help you prepare for that future. And the present moment is really all we have. But if you're only taking care of the present and you're not at least considering a little bit about where the future might go, then you're not taking the greatest advantage to really prepare yourself in the best way possible, which when you come there will make it that much easier for you to adapt. The objective then is to create a tailored strategy and practice for nurturing sustained positivity and motivation. And the question is then, how do you do this? You're going to see us in this session as well, bringing together a lot of these best practices that we have been repeating in different contexts with different elements, but we're going to bring them together here because, again, a big point of these sessions is not just to learn, but is to actually integrate these concepts and then go back to your own desk or go back to your own garden, wherever you're comfortable, and apply them, start to work on them for yourself, right? So how do you do this? How do you power up your hope and your courage? First is that hope and courage are contagious. So make sure, again, that all your inputs, whatever you are taking in terms of, information, influences, relationships, are full of that hope and courage as well. It doesn't mean ignoring the rest, but again, as we said, make sure that the stuff that, you want to be a part of your life, you're actually nurturing and filling your life with it, right? The second is, understand and trust that when you are in the new reality, you will make it work. You will adapt because you have no other option. Oftentimes, we spend so much time creating anxiety for ourselves by imagining the worst, imagining how things might be, but we don't realize that we are imagining it from where we are right now. When we get there, we will not be the same person, right? And we will not have the same skills necessarily. We may have advanced. Not to mention the fact that simply when you're in it, you have to deal with it, right? And so you'll find a way. And there's a certain comfort in that. Max Heistine says, we learn to trust ourselves by trusting ourselves, making mistakes, and then trusting ourselves again. And so this concept, I think, is really important because what it's saying is that the desire to trust and trusting yourself or anything or anyone else is also a choice. Right? You can also decide, I may have made a mistake. I may have, not anticipated this. I may have read this person wrong, but I've learned, as we say, life is not about necessarily, always looking on the bright side of things. Some things are really hard to see the bright side of, but you can see the learning points from anything. The other things that you can do for your hope and courage is, stay open and seek goodness. Again, you will see what you want to see. So make sure that, you look for things that inspire you. And in that set, think about the mindset you want to have, right? You have to not just believe, but want to believe in good things. And this is also when it comes down to what we call the fixed versus the growth mindset, right? The fixed mindset believes this is the way I am. This is the way things are. Therefore, I screwed this up. I'm incapable here. This will never work for me. We just operate from a set of rigid values that can't move, can't advance, can't grow. A growth mindset is the ability, the belief that really at the heart of it, yes, we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses, but if I work hard, if I seek the right help, if I curate my own sense of, goodness, perspective, whatever I need, well-being, I can achieve almost anything. Now, most of us are a mix of these two, right? It's not just about being one or the other, but in general, we do try and encourage people to identify where they are particularly fixed in their belief systems and how that might be blocking them. So in this respect, when you open up to seeing the goodness, both in yourself, the ability in yourself, right, you have so much more of a chance of developing that and getting to where you want to go. It nurtures a healthy perspective, and it also is about acknowledging the fact that, again, so many people are doing such great things. So look to the helpers, as Fred Rogers' mom said, and we mentioned in the other call. The other thing is, create a safe room in your head, in your space. In the previous session around ease, we talked about how to, create a beautiful environment, a working environment that could help you gain more facility in productivity and just flow and simplicity in the things you're trying to do day to day. We also talked about cleaning out your head with kind of negative dynamics in relationships, things that continue to war there and go through that are not helping you, right? But in this case, other than just creating, beautiful environments, create a safe place. There are so many amazing ways to do this, right? We talked about visualization. We talked about the idea of, having perhaps even your own cohort of your own different personalities of, mentors that you admire. They can be even imaginary characters. I know this sounds nuts, but it's not. It's really an age-old practice of connecting with the strongest, wisest parts of yourself. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that too. And the other deal, is fake it until you become it. This is a famous line by Amy Cuddy, who is an expert from Harvard University in nonverbal behavior. And she's seen that sometimes when you fake, so to speak, confidence, you actually, after a while, have practiced it so much through trying to appear confident that you actually grow in your overall confidence. We're applying that concept here too, right? It's not about not being authentic or true to how you feel. It's not about not being yourself. But you've all been in situations where something difficult is going on in your life and you have to put on a good face for a situation, for children, for your loved ones, right? And so while we definitely don't encourage you to go through your life doing that all the time because it causes great exhaustion and a lot of internal conflict, every once in a while, right, especially when there's a continuous difficult situation where you have very little control, trying to sometimes push a little bit of hope and courage in moments, even if you don't feel it, will actually help you transform into it. And we've heard actually a lot of folks coming back to us recently telling us how they've been finding different ways to do that. The last point about courage and hope is this idea of resilience versus antifragility. Resilience is this idea of being to endure difficulty, right? Being able to endure difficulty and kind of bracing yourself for the impact of things. That's very important. And in some cases, it's the most relevant. But antifragility is this idea of opening yourself up and saying, come get me, right? To the conflicts, to the challenges in life. As we said before, adversity makes the most beautiful flowers. The idea here is to understand that if you come in with the aspect that difficulty is part of growth, challenges are part of making us wiser and stronger, this actually, and this perspective will help you then weather the storms in a much easier way. Not to mention boosting hope and courage. So that's what we got for the first one. Let's go to the second one, which is about how to strengthen your determination and perseverance for creating a meaningful future. Meaningful means whatever you decide. And as we spoke about in the previous sessions, this is all up to you. So we start by defining determination, right? Determination is having a firm purpose. Sound familiar? If you go back to our call on purpose, you'll see a lot more aspects for how to create this for yourself. Defining perseverance is all about doing something despite the difficulty. Remember the shit sandwich, right? So this is the idea of even when things are challenging, when you choose that they're important for yourself, right? You go and push through it anyway. Grit is another concept very much related to perseverance. So as we said before, you are your best friend or your worst enemy, right? What are you feeding in all this? And this is all connected. Albert Einstein has this wonderful quote. I don't think many people actually know it, but I think it's incredibly powerful. He says, everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy. This is physics. So this concept of energy, some people treat as a mystical idea, but it's not the case at all, right? You feel the energy of people sometimes when they come into a room. They either pull you down or they bring you up. Right? You also feel your own energy and how it impacts your life on a daily basis. The idea here is really, as we say, try and match and imagine that way you wish to be authentic to yourself, right? Imagine that future, those things you want to create, and try and vibrate on that level. And vibrate means all the ways that you continue to orient yourself, to behave, to imagine, to visualize how you pass your moments, nurturing that thing that's important to you instead of beating yourself down. The question then becomes, what vision and resources will keep you moving and moving thoughtfully, right? Again, we're talking about here, not just to mobilize, but really do so in a thoughtful way. And the objective is to tap into this future self of yours. Tap into that future self and nourish a plan for fulfilling your short and long-term bliss. The future self, imagine, how can that person be? What is he or she like? What skills do they have? What have they perhaps learned that you're still struggling with? What have they grown into or grown out of, right? So, and even, of course, if you're not yet that person, the idea is that so much, all of the greatness, creativity, and talent that we have inside us, much of that is still subconscious. Unfortunately, a lot of people never actually bring that out. But if you really, really believe that your greatest treasure, what some call the inner gold, is all inside you already, you actually have ways of tapping into that. And we're going to get even further. So imagining your future self is about trying to visualize kind of where you want to go. But the next question is, how do you really create that? And so we start off with what we also call your wise self. So whereas the future self is where you might be in 6 months, 3 months, 2 years, your wise self is always your highest self, your center. And the idea is connect with that person. It may look like you in your head or something or someone else, but connect and ask. And this, again, may sound nuts, but when you're going through difficulties, this is a very tried and true practice over thousands of years, to be able to center yourself and not curate what you think you want to hear. Just visualize what that wise self of yourself looks like, right? And ask a specific question. Ask a specific question of, what do I need right now? Where do you think this is going, right? Yes and no questions are less useful, but really try and see what advice it gives you back. You will be astonished. The more you practice this, and again, don't try to answer it with your current mind, just put out the question and see what comes back. A beautiful practice, and the more you do practice it, can be one of the most powerful instruments you have for your growth, your well-being going forward. The second is really also connected to the first topic, which is, clarity will come. We said you're going to adapt whether you like it or not. But again, remember, you're going to be more advanced when that clarity does come. The key is, though, keep working. If you just sit back, and I don't mean not allowing yourself moments to coast or flow or take a break. No, those are very important. But if you completely run away from any opportunity to even ask a question, to even reflect a little bit, then it's difficult. But the idea here is, if you keep working bit by bit, step by step, and working is simply sometimes asking a question, sometimes trying a little bit something new, all the things we've been talking about in these sessions, that work will help you accomplish the things that you want, survive, but thrive in the future as well. This famous quote we talked about by Pablo Picasso, where he says, the muse or inspiration will find you, but it has to find you working. Well, it's very similar when it comes to things like determination, hope, and perseverance as well. The other thing, we spoke about this very much before, is, define your concept of your purpose of success. We had another call on this and we went into great detail, but, combining your general idea of what is your new concept of how successful and the ways you want to be successful in your life. As we said, what do you want to be and what do you want to become and what do you want to achieve? Combined with, identifying some core priorities and the reasons why they are core priorities for you is really critical for giving yourself an internal compass going forward. And I would say in this particular case for the future, really stick to no more than 3, maybe 5 to really focus on. The key always here is to go deep on a few things, not to try and splatter, as we say, across too many. In that respect, then, search, visualize, orient around the upcoming needs and trends, values of this world, but also of your particular industry, right? There's nothing to stop us thinking about this. And a lot of people are asking those questions. How is the world going to change, for the better or for the worse? Are people going to come out and say, oh my gosh, I so miss traveling, and so now everybody's going to take a whole bunch of planes? Or are people going to become more conscientious and say, well, you know what? Maybe we don't need to travel that much to work. Maybe we can work a little bit more from home. Maybe we can take some more local vacations. Maybe we can make all these very, very tiny changes to be able to understand and apply the learning we did get from this challenging situation, but also continue our quality of life. And so this also is with respect to your particular industry. A lot of folks are just sitting back passively. And again, if you need a break, it's a question, but they're doing this in general too, just saying, ugh, I don't want to think about it. I don't know where the future is going. And because I feel uncomfortable with uncertainty, I'm not even going to try and think about it. And I think this is a mistake. You may be right or you may be wrong, but just dedicating a little bit of time to imagine, even in a creative way, of what your particular industry might need, right? This will allow you to innovate, to come up with ideas, perhaps faster than others, perhaps cleverer than others. And this is the key to job security, whether you're an entrepreneur or a professional. The other things are, start moving. Be the one to take the first initiative. Don't be afraid in that respect. Again, things might go, things might not, but that's the case always. The important thing here is when you're waiting for everybody else to do it first, to show some trust or to contact or whatever, then we cannot be frustrated if we're not getting the answers that we're looking for. So take the first step, even if it's a very, very small one. We also say organize like a boss. This is kind of a statement here. And what we mean by that is really make your life, personal and professional, as easy, efficient, and effective as possible. And go back to the earlier sessions. We talk about not just ease, but productivity, flow. What do you need to take out? What do you need to simplify? What do you need to postpone? What do you need to inject? But really take this as a task. The most powerful people, the most, and I don't mean powerful in the world, I mean powerful in their lives, the most confident people, the most centered people take this as one of the grand pillars of their lives. They take this seriously, yet not solemnly, to constantly keep thinking, how do I make this, more elegant, more simple, more effective for myself, instead of just accepting things as they come. Challenge yourself with gentle little pushes. Again, this is kind of striking the right balance, and each person has their own between allowing yourself to rest, having a lot of self-compassion and self-acceptance, but also pushing yourself little by little, knowing that some days you'll accomplish a bit or nothing at all, and others you will absolutely floor yourself and supersede your expectations. Leave room for changes and adjustments. This is so important right now because so many things are shifting. And this is the way that we plan, right? This is the way that we plan, but that we don't sabotage ourselves by planning too strictly. In that sense, understand that you have to shift some of your expectations or maybe just leave them to the side. Be open that collaborations and projects may turn out in a different way. Maybe they start slower or more delayed, but then they turn out into something even better. Maybe the timing actually works for you better when they do come. So it's just this idea of kind of gently hold that space open for change. And this is in general a wonderful best practice, but I would say particularly in circumstances such as ours. Check for internal resistance, right? We talked a lot about limiting beliefs. I think this is, and there's so many different forms this takes, but also be careful of the stories you tell yourself. And stories are answers that we give to particular questions. And then as we repeat them and we elaborate them to reinforce them, they become a story that guides our lives. And some of those are really not helpful. Answers to, what if I fail? What if I succeed, right? Is this possible? Can I possibly do this? See how you're answering these questions, right? Am I capable? One thing is saying, well, actually, I don't have the skill. Am I interested in getting it? Am I interested to work to get it? How can I go about it? Fine. Another thing is just beating yourself up and saying, well, because I don't have this, I cannot move forward and there's nothing possible for me. So just pay attention a little bit to what are these dialogues? What are these stories? And you may in the process also discover older stories that you have about relationships, not just your capabilities, but also, the world as a whole. And sometimes one of the most interesting things is actually to tap into them and say, wait a minute, how does that serve me? And wait, is this even mine? Because some of these stories we've inherited, like other belief systems, and maybe they just don't suit you, right? We always say limit the negative, expand the positive. You've heard this. Practice it, right? Next time you really see something that is just eating away at you and that doesn't sound good for you and gives you that cognitive dissonance internally, pay attention, right? And see what it says. And then get away from it all. Perseverance, strength, productivity, all of these big motivating words have a lot to do with just getting out of Dodge every once in a while, switching it off, right? We were saying the other day, my husband and I, we said, part of what's exhausting about this situation is that it's always on. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's thinking about it. It's in the newspaper. Everything is about it. I mean, to give you the silliest example, even if you love chocolate cake, if you had to eat it all day, every day for 2 months, and you heard about it and that was all that was in the topic, it's the fastest way to get really tired and exhausted by a topic, right? So it's really important. Find whatever ways, silly ways, whatever works for you to really regularly just get away from it. Whether it's a silly book, a series, whatever, because your perseverance is not a straight line and we need to regularly recharge those batteries. So let's move to the third part, right? Now we move away from just ourselves and we open up to the rest of the world. And again, some of you I know may not feel entirely ready for this, or you may not feel ready to do so other than your most intimate circle, and that's fine. We wanted to leave you with this idea though, because first of all, I think it's important to consider us being here in this world for something beyond, perhaps beyond just our own pleasure, right? And our own achievement. And also to consider the idea that it's actually quite easy to contribute value to others. And here's, we're going to talk a couple of ways of how. So creating a sense of community, collaboration, connectedness is ultimately about reaching out. It's about responding and supporting others. And it's about this concept of serving, which is not subservient. It's not being lesser than people. It's about adding value in a way that makes sense for you. But doing so while respecting your own needs and limits. You know, regularly sense checking your commitments and your relationships, as we spoke, to see, do they still serve you? Does this feel fair? Does this inspire you and make you feel good versus kind of bring you down? And also being strategic and thoughtful about how we choose to go about it. One thing is doing and offering something for free, which I think is great when it's done in a way that you can sustain yourself, right? But being prey to people who will take advantage of you and your skills in a way that undervalues you or takes advantage of you, that's not okay, right? So strategic mindset is not about being just self-serving. Some people, I think about it in that respect. It's about creating, as we say, your intelligently designed how. How are you going to do something? So you can either just launch into it, or you can take a few moments, as we spoke about in some of the previous sessions, reflect and think, wait, what is the best way to go about this? Who do I contact? What do I need to sense check, right? How much can I give? And we'll talk a little bit more about other things to consider. For those of you sci-fi freakies, science fiction freaks like myself, I do have to recommend to you that there's a wonderful Star Trek series that just came out. And I do believe it's possibly the best. Some people might hate me for saying that, but it's wonderful. It's the new Picard series. It's, Captain Picard, Jean-Luc Picard, is elderly, brilliant as ever. And it's a sci-fi series, but at the same time, it's incredibly wise about the way that his relationships evolve and the things that he has to deal with, reflect on. And it's a great, wonderful acting. But anyway, I'm not here to plug the show. He does say one thing, which I thought was marvelous. He says to be alive is both a responsibility as well as a right. And I think this is so true, right? So many people go through their lives passively swallowing whatever life gives them. They don't see it as an opportunity. They don't see it as the gift that it is. They don't cherish what they have around them. And I think in this respect, understanding that life is also responsibility is not about obligation. It's about understanding that given that gift, there's so much we can give back to it and with it. And it's just something to contemplate. The question then here becomes for us, what connections and initiatives are valuable to you now and in the future that you want to nurture, right? What do you want to get behind, as we said? And the objective here is organize, contribute, and participate in what makes sense for you, again, now and in the long term. Because you need to keep recharging your batteries. You need to keep feeling inspired now. Some of those things will only serve you now. But some things also, whether you get involved with them right now or you're looking to get involved in the future, the things that are going to keep you going forward, right? And so this is also about not just our own, again, motivation and perseverance, but contributing to this kind of sense of greater good. And how do you do this then? One thing is list your strengths, list your core experiences, your values, your priorities, all this work that we have been talking about in these sessions, and clarify, right, what you can and what you want to contribute to. And, my clients and my loved ones always laugh because I'm always like, do a list. And they're like, oh, another list, another homework? Yes, but it's so easy to do. Just write in detail, right? When you've established your priorities and your concept of success first, as we talked previously, is, what are those things you can offer to others that right now are of particular value and will be of particular value going forward? The second part of this is then, research and list the people and initiatives that are inspiring you, right? Again, that will inspire you now and inspire you going forward, but you want to connect with. Look at them, right? And consider Also your time, also your limits and all that. But consider where joining them will also be a great source of strength or inspiration or richness for you. David Hawkins says something really interesting. He says, every act or decision we make that supports life, supports all life, including our own. I think it's such a marvelous statement. This idea that, and it's so against this scarcity mindset of if I help myself, right, I don't have time for others. Or this idea that if I'm giving something to someone else, I'm taking away from myself, right? Well, if you're doing that in relationships and situations that are destructive to you or that don't respect you, then yes. But when you're looking for what we call mutually beneficial relationships, mutually beneficial dynamics, then as you support that, you support yourself, right? There's a wonderful line in Brene Brown's beautiful short book that I really recommend, The Art of Imperfection. And she says, you know, the most truly compassionate people are people who first take care of themselves, because then everything they give, they can truly give unconditionally, because they know that they're taking care of themselves and they're not putting themselves at risk. And I think this is marvelous. It's a beautiful way of saying, when you take care of yourself first, then what you give, you can truly give willingly and trustingly and lovingly. And I think this is a wonderful balance that maybe sometimes is difficult for all of us to reach, but is something really beautiful to strive towards. The idea then, once you've identified in more detail your strengths, your values, your experiences that can be of value to others, as well, those others, initiatives and people that, you know, you want to get behind and support, then create a strategy around that, right? How do you want to go about it? Again, it's your intelligently designed how. Look at the best ways to connect. Look at key questions you want to ask them. Remember that quality questions are not just about actually getting really important information and clarification around things that are critical in understanding whether you want to get involved with someone or something and building that relationship, but they also show interest in the other person and what they're doing, right? When you ask someone how you're feeling or what's important to you, you're showing that you care about their perspective and that you're not just in it for yourself. And hopefully that's the case, right? The other things to consider in your strategy is, again, not just the value you can add, but also consider the value that you're going to get in return. It's not that we do everything with self-interest. No, but again, this is about helping us troubleshoot what situations are we getting involved in where we just keep giving and we get exhausted because people keep taking in a way that, you know, just takes away from us. Now, there are situations with people you have to take care of, family, children, where yes, it's exhausting, but that's the nature of the relationship, right? Even then, there are boundaries that can be created. But particularly in this case, we're really talking about reaching out to others to whom you don't have any sort of responsibility and obligation. And so in that sense, it's absolutely correct to question, you know, really, how is this also going to be a benefit and a joy for me? Practice and create your story. Your story is kind of an extended version of what, you know, you've heard of your pitch, the elevator pitch. It's kind of quickly saying who you are, what you do, for whom, and what's special about it. Well, your story, imagine, is an extended version. When you've done all these things that we've said, you know, you weave into a couple of paragraphs your core, you know, your core values, your core strengths, again, your key experiences, but anything that you really think that other people should know that has been part of, you know, creating you into the person that you are and being able to offer the value that you can, right? So you weave that into a true story, focusing on only the most important things. And obviously, you know, you can shift this and vary this depending on who your audience is, as long as it's true, you know, true and authentic. What happens here then is when you integrate the story, when you really localize and identify and clarify, really, what have been the core things that make me up, knowing that that can shift. But for right now, who am I and what can I offer? It becomes that much easier, that much more beautiful, that much more effective in being able to communicate that to others. I'm sure you've all been in this situation where you're having, you know, a wonderful talk with someone, a conversation, however brief, and when they ask you, so what are you about? You know, your mind goes blank, or you think of 35 million things you want to say, but none of them really seem to send across a clear and effective message, right? So this helps avoid that. And again, just like anything else, it's a little bit of work. What's also beautiful about creating and practicing your story, which you can do in front of the mirror, you can do talking to your cat or your dogs, you can talk to, your plants or with your friends. But the other really great thing is that as you also practice it meeting other people, it becomes more and more natural. And the idea is not to create a soliloquy or a monologue here, not at all. It's just that when you have that story so internalized here, so well known, you can continue to shift it, but you can also throw in little smidgens in different places. As you're having a conversation with someone, it's not that you suddenly launch, hi, I'm Nev and I'm an international blah, 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 right? It's more that, they say something and it triggers, oh, well, I actually love gardening too. Here's what we did the other season. Maybe that would be interesting, to you. Or you're also do university work. How cool, right? What kind of things are you teaching? Here's the stuff that I've done, right? It makes it that much easier for you to also hone in on the things that you may have in common with a person where you can find that kind of shared compatibility. There's a lot more to say on this, and we'll probably do more sessions in the future about it, but this is a good way to start. Just start writing out paragraphs, or what I like to do preferably is not actually write full sentences, but do bullets of the most important things I want to say by category, and then just see what flows out, right? The world should know your value, and the best way that we communicate that value is oftentimes speaking it, right, and presenting it. So make sure that that corresponds to all the richness you have inside to offer. The other thing is, create this networking strategy. We talked about, really identifying the initiatives and the people that you'd like to contribute to. Now really put it to paper. And what I mean by that is, imagine getting to 5 to 10 people and or initiatives, and behind every initiative is a point person. So make sure it comes down to people that you want to connect with or cultivate a relationship with, let's say over the next 6 months. Now, some of these you may be mistaken. Maybe you contact them and you realize, oh, it's not what I thought, or it's not that valuable or whatever, or they don't respond. That's okay. We all get to start somewhere, but you'll be surprised. Other people, especially at a time like this when they're looking to connect and they're looking to feel a sense of community, it's probably one of the most amazing moments to do that. And so what do? We'll make a list, right? Come up with these people, but not too many. Think about what's valuable to them, research them a little bit, see what they seem to be about and what their story is. Look at some of the things you may have in common, identify that. Think about the best way to contact them. Think about the best way you'd like to develop the relationship. Think about things that you can offer them, even if it's just a small resource or who knows. Think about some questions you can ask them and ways to follow up. And just a couple of questions if you answer for each one of these. If you're interested, send us an email at nev@nevcoaching.com and I'll send you the tool that we have specifically around this to help you. And when you have this, you just leave it on your desk. It just allows you to, again, instead of constantly circling these things in your head, have a very clear direction of, hey, what's interesting for me and who do I want to be connected with, or at least see if there's some mutual benefit going forward. I had a student of mine in the master's program the other day say to me particularly that, and I think I may have mentioned this to you, that she just was feeling lonely and off and unmotivated. And so she left aside some of her academic work and she said, what do I really feel like right now? And she said, I want to connect. And she did this whole thing by herself. She came up exactly with a list and tailored very specific little emails to each person around the things they thought would be interesting for them, but very brief. Everybody responded. She was so impressed, but I think the key here is to personalize it, right? We're not mass emailing, we're not disrespecting other people, we're not demanding anything or asking first. We're just trying to open up that bridge of contact and see what comes out. There's a really wonderful entrepreneur. She's a famous online entrepreneur in IttyBiz, and IttyBiz is the name of her business. And she said something in one of her blogs a long time ago, I will never forget. She said, if I had to do it all over again, because she's very successful, she said, I would just meet people and talk about like dogs and babies and, other things like that, gardening. We're so set on every time we meet someone, giving these pitches, competing to present ourselves over each other. Nobody's listening. Then we've got initiatives like, fast speed networking, which just makes people more anxious. People throw cards at each other and don't remember anything because then you end up being a number to them and they're a number to you. The best thing when it comes to this kind of work, and we'll do a lot more content on networking going forward, but is, just have a meaningful conversation. It's better to have a connection with 5-10 minutes or a few emails where you talk about something real, something that you've taken the time to really see could be of advantage to that person and not muscle in asking from the beginning. these things make a huge difference to just, again, open up that gate. The other thing is, you know, as we said before, just be open to the different ways that you can work together, not just ways that your own initiatives might work for you, but also sometimes the way that contacts and opportunities through people can appear. I had some of the most amazing, new jobs, promotions, to new companies, clients come through the most unsuspecting situations where all it took was a little bit of courage to approach a speaker after an event where nobody else wanted to do it. Or, you know, just a little bit of time saying yes to maybe a dinner over something personal and being willing to ask someone a question or get interested for the moment in what they're about. The idea here is that people are people, no matter, you know, who they are or what their position is. And so we treat people, when we see people and we treat them with respect and kindness, they remember that. As long as, of course, it's not used as a gimmick, but it's used as a genuine connection and interest in humanity. The last thing I want to tell you in this section is, you know, just also please be open about judgment. We're all stressed and we're all exhausted with this situation. And we said at the beginning of this series that, you know, yes, we are all in the same boat in terms of general circumstances with this quarantine, but we are in very different boats in terms of specific circumstances, right? For example, we've said already, you know, the incredible strain, the things that people are seeing on the front lines, both in the medical industry and others. People who themselves have been sick or have had loved ones be very ill or even pass away due to this situation, completely different experience. People who are, on the one hand, working like crazy, are possibly even exhausted and stressed, versus those who are sitting at home and have been laid off or are frightened for their future or how they're going to make ends meet. And then also the difference between, you know, children who even at different stages of development are struggling with certain things due to this. Some are loving having their parents home, but others are deeply disturbed and probably also feel that stress all around. Then we also have the difference with elderly folks. You know, elderly folks, particularly if they've been through a lot of difficulty in their own lives or have even witnessed great crises like wars, being in a particular stage in their own lives may take a perspective on this that's different. So when you're connecting with people, just try and keep that open mind. If there are people that you just feel like you cannot continue connecting with on a regular basis, that's fine. You know, gravitate to those who do enrich you, but you don't have to necessarily rail against or criticize or judge others. Just let them be on their own, right? The idea here is that we may find a lot of differing experiences, a lot of different differing emotions within our own families, within our own companies, within our own teams. And since those are not people that you're just gonna forget about, the question is then, how do we live in peace, respecting each other's unique experience around this? Try and still bridge some sense of connectedness, but in a way that doesn't drain us. We'll give you more on this in some future sessions. So that's what I got for you, but I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes in the world, which is by the very famous philosopher Alan Watts. He says, "The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves." I think this is marvelous, right? And it goes with anyone's beliefs, right? It doesn't matter whether you're religious, spiritual, or not. The idea is everything we've been talking about in this section, as we said before, was very much about, you know, learning new concepts, but really repeating and showing different ways of applying some core practices in different elements of your life, because it's the work that creates change, right? But all this work we're talking about, folks, it's just about you living the most precious, beautiful life that, you know, as you define it. And that's it. When you feel centered and connected with that, then you can be there for others. Then you can serve in ways, then you can, you know, find more ease. And it's not that any of us are living in this perfect zen of that, but the closer you get to that, the easier things become, particularly in moments of difficulty. So that's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for sharing these moments with us. Also, big thank you to those folks who've been watching the videos, both in Spanish and English, and the wonderful comments we've been getting from people all over the world, which has really helped us also keep creating content that I hope has been of service to you. Well, this is the end of the first edition of the WeAreOne Sessions. We're definitely going to continue. We're going back to our creative boards, as we say it. And we're going to be creating a lot more content, in this case, still about personal and professional development, but also very much about the other part of our work, which is developing companies and developing teams, high-performing teams. So that's the other half of our specialty. And I think now that the world is moving more again towards new projects, work, and kind of pushing forward with this crisis, these are now going to be also very relevant. So what we're probably going to do is also do a lot shorter videos so that it becomes easier for you to consume, but we will continue occasionally to do some live calls. So I hope you'll join us there. We have a YouTube channel. Who knew? I never thought I'd be on YouTube, but here we are. So I got to tell you that because that's where you'll find all the other videos. And if you find this helpful, what my beautiful team, Monica and Fernanda, are doing is they're also chopping up little bits out of these videos so that you can find little shorts on very specific topics. And you can also watch the full session. So feel free to share them, leave us a comment, but subscribe more than anything, because this is what allows us to keep creating more content. And as well, another channel for us is to go to nevcoaching.com. On the English version, at the bottom of the homepage, you can subscribe to our blogs and our special invites for different events that we do. Obviously, YouTube is about videos, but anything else we do through our core community of Nev Coaching Consulting, beautiful, wonderful people that we adore, right? And there's a lot of stuff, resources that we do there that we offer. Many are free or heavily discounted, but certainly at a great value. So join us there as well. And thank you again. Questions, comments, strategies for your own future. I'll give you again some of the questions, right? What inspires hope and strengthens your courage now and going forward? What vision and resources will keep you moving and moving thoughtfully, strategically? And what connections and initiatives are valuable to you now and in the future that you want to nurture? What you got for me? Come on, I'd love to hear from you.
I don't have an answer to the questions that you just mentioned.
No problem.
But I do have a question so I've done you for a few sessions, and while we're in the sessions, I feel very light and inspired, and yeah, these are things that I need to think about and all the rest of it. Then we finish our call, I have lunch, and I start working, and I work until 9 o'clock. Once 9 o'clock is finished, then it's just like, get everyone fed, get everyone ready for bed. Right. And then the next day it starts, and I don't feel that lightness again until we have the next session, because I don't find the time or moment to stop. And I know I should, but so yeah, help with that, please.
God, I'm so glad you said this, because you know, if this wasn't our core work, right, we would struggle with the same thing. But this is what we do. But I have to admit, the same issue is that, you know, one thing is creating work for you, you know, content for you folks, but I also have to struggle sometimes to find that time for myself. I think there's two elements here. And it's so important what you said, we are really in a unique time right now. So if you find that you are in a moment right now where you are in crunch period, meaning that either things are really intense because you have a lot of demands on your time, work-wise or family-wise, caretaking people, or both, or, you know, you're just feeling the strain of the situation and you just feel like, I just can't right now, no problem. Hold these sessions. You've got my contact. Don't leave your site, but just remember to kind of open that door or leave that window open and open it a little bit further when you do finally settle down, because the intensity of this is not going to continue nonstop forever, right? So for whatever reason right now is not the moment, that's all right, right? That's why we got a YouTube channel, and other people have all kinds of other resources all over the world, because we know that, you know, some folks also say, like, we can't join live right now, things are crazy. That's all right, right? So one thing is that if you have to just table it for a while, that's all right. Just maybe put a reminder in your calendar, put something on your board, something inspiring, but just something that brings you back to that. The second part of that, and again, I don't know exactly how you're feeling inside. If you do feel like you're ready, if you do feel like you want to do this, then it's a question of not finding time, but creating it. And this is tough because so many of us, particularly in situations where we're in caretaking roles, either leading companies or taking care of folks at home, and again, both or many other things, we're so used to putting ourselves second. So if you are feeling like you're inspired, then it's really being strict in the beginning to say, for example, Julia, when are the best times for you to do this kind of work? Morning, night, weekend? If you had to pick a day and a time, forget about the things you have on your plate right now. But if you had to pick a date and a time during the week that you think would probably be the most fruitful for you with this, when might it be?
Probably mornings before I start work, because once I've sat down at the computer, then it just rolls away with itself.
Great. So,
like I wanted to say weekends, but every weekend has come and I've just been so exhausted. The whole of Saturday, I'm lying there going, okay, on Sunday, I'll do my step away work, like my open thinking work. And then Sunday comes and I'm still just knackered.
love, if you're working until 9 o'clock all day, every day, then the smartest thing you can do yourself when you get, when you get to the weekend, is what we say, is disconnect, get away from it all. Of course, that's what your body is saying, But if you say, okay, so it's possibly a moment in the morning, during the week, but if you had to gauge, for example, your level of interest, inspiration, etc., what might be a morning during the week that possibly could be best for you?
I'm not sure. Maybe midweek.
Okay.
I've already got started, so I don't feel guilty about not starting the week.
All right. Great. So, excuse me. So here's something. Just make a date with yourself and try. No expectations. And start slow, right? Maybe that's just, I'm going to answer one question of the crazy questions that Frustrating Nev has given me. And one question that I think is the most important for me, and I'm going to just take half an hour to do that on Wednesday morning. And just try. No expectations. You do that and maybe you realize, oop, it should have been a little bit later, a little bit earlier, or you know what, maybe Tuesday's better than Wednesday. That's all right. But the thing is that if we just keep thinking, when is the inspiration going to hit me, right? When you're so tired, then it never comes. So there's just two questions. If you really, really, really don't feel like you have the motivation, the interest, the need right now, then just table it. We need moments in our lives when we're not constantly scratching under the surface. But if you are interested, just try. Set a date with yourself, put it in your calendar, get excited about it, set out your breakfast in the morning or whatever is going to make that super cool for you, and start slow, not 2 hours, maybe just half an hour with one question that really feels right for you, right? And this is really key because we talk about a lot of stuff here and other people talk about a lot of stuff here, but every person is more drawn to a particular one depending on what's relevant for them. So starting with something that feels the most relevant is a good way to get you going and see what happens. See what happens. Over time, maybe you have to enforce it in the beginning. That's usually the case. Over time, then it becomes a practice that you'll need it so much that it will become a natural priority in certain ways. Does that sound feasible?
Yeah, it does. It does. I will put that into action and see what happens. Thank you.
Let me know how it goes, okay? And also just consider an experiment. That's it. And see where it takes you. But it's a great question. We had another person on the Spanish call ask something similar, saying, but she said it a little bit differently. She said, right now I am, I just love listening, but I'm not ready to take action. You said it's okay, Anyone else? Thoughts, questions? Thank you, Julia. Ideas, strategies you're using for yourself? Thank you, folks.
No.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Well, for us, there is this one trick is the one that is I implement and then it's work. since few months ago, that is, I never put with my mobile phone is in my bedside table.
Brilliant.
So there is no electronic. So we rely on the alarm clock. And then so when I get up, there's no that is desire is to open my mobile phone and check up is the social media, which is or whatever is, you know, email or whatever. So instead is I wake up in the morning, and then is I look around, and then is I is in the state of appreciation. It's a, you know, it's a beautiful day, and then it says the bedroom is the one that is I sleep on, that is beautiful, and then it's only appreciation that is, and then it's a take our dog out, and then it's not until that is I finish breakfast, and then I start. It's in that way is in that every morning I have to start the day is with it's happiness. It's in my heart. So it's, you know, so
yeah, one of the things that I found was that I was waking up in the morning with a kind of blocked sinuses, and when we didn't put any gadgets in the room or in the bed, they're now clear in the morning.
so
Now I don't know whether that is, I don't know whether it's the electronics, the 5G, the 4G, or the internet, or the Wi-Fi. I don't know. I just know that I feel different in the morning.
so there is no electronic at all. It's in our bedrooms now. So we leave it's in the living room, the charging, and then
So the charge, we charge overnight, or like a lot of people, and it's now in other rooms.
This is brilliant what you're saying, because, you know, this is becoming it's a different pandemic, which is that we're all so connected and dependent, even addicted at times, to our mobile devices and to our screens. And, you know, I'm often saying to my husband, oh God, do you remember the times when we, you know, we used to play stickball, and, you know, you had like a phone to pick up? Now, excuse me, we all now are really depending on that, and it does bring a lot of ease into our lives. But I think if someone charted it, just how much ease versus how much extra strain it does, it may be, you know, it may be a tight competition. So I think what you're saying are really great practices of putting it away. You know, if for whatever reason you feel like you can't turn it off, because especially if you're, you know, in this kind of situation, you want people to be able to contact you, then put it on silent or put it on do not disturb. But also this idea of visually remove it. So that you're not, that's what my husband and I've been doing. But also what you're saying in terms of energy, I also don't know, I know there's research being done on this, but I also don't know how it works. But a lot of folks are starting to say that, you know, just not to have it close to your head, to your bed, because there's energy, it's physics, you know, there's energy going there that makes it more difficult for the body to relax. So I think what's wonderful is you're really applying things that make sense for you. And this idea of your routine in the morning is really, I think, very precious. There are folks who need to start and get some things out of the way so they can really enjoy their breakfast. Then others who say, I don't start until, you know, I would be able to, you know, really have my time to relax and do exactly what you're doing. We started walking around our garden at dawn and just seeing what new plants are coming out, which gives us a lot of joy. But, you know, everybody's got a different situation. But this idea of, you know, starting the day or ending the day can be moments particularly good to take time to really reflect and also orient yourself about, you know, where you want to go in those moments. I think this is a really good point. Thank you. And thank you for joining us these times. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Well, thank you all so much for being here with us. Join us on YouTube, join us at Nev Coaching on our mailing list, and we'll just keep sending you lots of great stuff because, as they say, you know, sharing is living and living is sharing. And the idea here is just to create a community where everybody feels safe to be able to do that. So take good care and we'll see you soon.